What's up everyone, welcome to the channel, and today I'm going to be giving you my full card predictions and betting breakdown for UFC Vegas 85 Nassourdine Imavov versus Dolidze. Let's start out with the prelims. We have Thomas Petersen versus Jamal Pogues. I'm going with Thomas Petersen here. I don't think he gets a finish though. I think Jamal Pogues is pretty decent on the ground. I was watching his fight back on the regional scene with Alex Polizzi, who was able to take him down multiple times, but was not able to find the finish until round 4. Where he lost to a heel hook. I don't think Thomas Petersen has the greatest submissions. Maybe a good rear naked choke, maybe some power in his hands as well, but I do think he's going to take him down. And Jamal Pogues is just going to kind of play it safe, try to get back up to the feet. We're going to see a lot of takedowns here. It's going to be a very boring, low-level heavyweight fight. I don't mind the Jamal Pogues side, though. He is the better striker. If he stuffs the takedowns or scrambles back up to the feet consistently, he will win this fight. It's just something about heavyweight grapplers that when you have a 260-pound man on top of you, it's a lot harder to get back up to your feet. And just the Alex Polizzi fight. I know Jamal Pogues was a light heavyweight, and he didn't look that unathletic at that light heavyweight division. He still doesn't have the greatest power here. And while he is a little bit, actually he's a lot quicker here. He is the much quicker striker. But he's not that much more athletic. And I will say this much. Thomas Petersen has some nice takedown entries. He is the wrestling type of guy. He's got good singles. There was a moment in the Contender Series against Chandler Cole where he had a slick takedown where he kind of tripped his opponent. Maybe it wasn't on the Contender Series, but I've seen multiple fights with this guy in the regional scene. He's looked good. Finished all of them very, very early. I think a finish is very possible here, but Jamal Pogues survived very well against Alex Polizzi on the regional scene. And although he has used wrestling to his advantage in the UFC and on the Contender Series, I don't know how good his takedown defense is. I can't trust on it to massively improve. He is fat. That's a sign of him letting himself go. When it comes to the two physiques, I do feel like Thomas Petersen is more meant to be fat. In other words, I'm saying the fat on his body is better distributed. And there's a clear wrestling skill there. And when it comes to low-level heavyweight MMA, I'm going to be trusting the wrestler, especially if I believe he's going to find the takedowns. But don't rule out Jamal Pogues from finding a submission. When he was getting taken down by Alex Polizzi, he was threatening some submissions, and he used that to get back up to the feet, was able to scramble back up to the feet multiple times, but he's in much worse shape, and he's got a much bigger boy on top of him this time. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Landon Quiñones versus Marquel Mederos. I'm very excited for this fight. This is one of those fights where I think we're going to get a fight of the night type of potential here. Marquel Mederos looked very good on the Contender Series against Aliaskhab. I made a video on my top 10 Dana White's Contender Series prospects from this season, and he was on there. I think he was like number 5 or so. This guy's got good power in the hands, good takedown defense, probably pretty decent ability to get it down to the ground. On the regional scene, if you've watched him, he's shown some pretty solid submission defense. Overall, he knows what he's doing there. On the feet, great power. He switches stances a lot, and he's got some good low kicks. And I like that he switches stances here, because when we saw Landon Quiñones against Nasrat Haqparast was having success when he would fight an orthodox, and then when he got to close range, he would switch to southpaw and then land some big shots. Landon has some very good low kicks, and that's why originally I was on the Landon Quiñones side. But after doing some deep dive research, digging into his camp a little bit, some of his fights on the regional scene, Marquel Mederos targets the legs very well. In the first round against Aliaskhab's leg was blown up. And then there's other fights in the regional scene where he's just ripping low kicks like nothing. And then you go and check out his camp. Jonathan Martinez and Chris Gutierrez are training with him at the gym. I don't remember the name of the gym, but those two guys have great leg kicks. Jonathan Martinez, in my opinion, is top 3 when it comes to leg kicks. I think he's probably behind Alex Pereira, potentially even in front of Yeong because he hits so hard with his leg kicks, and they're so damn effective, and it doesn't feel like anyone has an answer to him. I'll probably put Yeong ahead of him just because Yeong has had more success on the highest level, but Jonathan Martinez's low kicks are fantastic. Chris Gutierrez's are as well, and I really do think that this camp trains good low kick defense more than likely because you got 2 great leg kickers. I think he's training with them, getting some good reps. I do like on the feet that he switches stances like Nasrat Haqparast. Nasrat Haqparast will rip to the body, so will Marquel Mederos. Marquel Mederos is more powerful. He's a better ability to take this fight down to the ground. He's bigger than Nasrat Haqparast. Now, Nasrat might be a little bit quicker, more accustomed to 3 rounds, and Landon might have the cardio advantage here, but Marquel Mederos has gone 3 rounds on the regional scene. We haven't seen it in the UFC. Obviously, this is his UFC debut, and sometimes these Contender Series guys, you should fade them going into their UFC debut. But I'm not going to feed into that narrative when we're breaking it down fight for fight stylistically. I think the switching stances, the low kick defense that we're probably going to see from Marquel Mederos and the low kicks in general coming back towards Landon Quiñones will have a lot of success, and he's got more power. I do think this will make it to a decision. I think Landon Quiñones is very durable. He took some very big shots from Nasrat, and I know Nasrat isn't Francis Ngannou type of power, but I mean, he's knocked out Jamie Mullarkey. He's hurt a couple of guys throughout his career. He's not 100% pillow fist, and he was landing like 100 shots clean on the head of Landon Quiñones. Like I said, though, Landon Quiñones, athletic, quick, pretty solid cardio, good low kicks. I mean, he's got some power to him as well, so he's always going to have a good chance against anybody. He's got some solid grappling defense. Maybe not the greatest. I think Nasrat might have taken him down at one point, but I do think this stays on the feet. We're going to see a Marquel Mederos 30-27/29-28. One of the rounds is going to be close. I think Marquel will probably find a knockdown, really hurt him at some point, and this will be a fun one. Let's move on to the next fight of the card. We have Luana Carolina versus Julia Stoliaranko. I'm going with Luana Carolina, and I'm not confident. I think it's as simple as this. Julia Stoliaranko probably finds the finish in the first round, maybe the early second, and outside of that, she's going to lose the fight. I think if this goes to decision, this is a Luana Carolina fight. The question is, does Julia Stoliaranko find the takedown in the first round? And to be honest with you, I don't know. She's actually a pretty strong girl, and she'll explode to try and find the takedown. If she does, submission's probably happening. That's how it goes. I do think that Luana Carolina has shown some decent takedown defense throughout her career, and because of that, I lean towards her in this fight. I think she's the clear better striker. She clearly has the better cardio, and in her most recent fight against, I think it was Ivica, it was Ivica Petrovic, I think. There was a couple moments where she defended some submissions, was very calm, fought her way through it. She's a UFC vet. I could see her getting done very easily here by Julia Stoliaranko, but at the end of the day, she has had more success in the UFC. With the gun to my head, I'm going to be picking Luana Carolina because she has good takedown defense, so there's a chance this fight never hits the ground, and if it hits the ground, there is a chance that she fights through the submissions and has success later in the fight. On the feet, she's the better striker. I got to go with Luana here, but low confidence. If you're betting on this fight, you're a betting degenerate, and I accept you because we love those over here. But, yeah, this is not a fun fight to bet on. Let's move on to the next fight of the card. We got Jeong Lee versus Blake Bilder. I'm going with Jeong Lee here. Look, Blake Bilder has an annoying style. I was considering him here, but ultimately, I don't think he's that good. In his most recent performance against Kyle Nelson, he was getting tagged with some shots, got rocked a couple of times, and he's getting hit with straight punches. Jeong Lee's best punches are straight punches. I know Jeong Lee got taken down multiple times by Jia or Jia Yi, one of the guys in the road to the UFC, but that guy is very strong. I think he had some decent takedown entries, in my opinion, and pushed at an insane pace. Jeong Lee showed pretty decent cardio. Maybe he's not Muradov. I know he doesn't have the greatest cardio here, but I don't think he's just going to go out there and get ragdolled. After round one, I think he still got live in round two. In round three, if it's not a super high-paced grappling type of fight, I do think he has the cardio to make it long. Something that I don't see a lot of people really bringing up here is Jeong Lee is a BJJ black belt. Blake Bilder is a grappler that's going to shoot takedowns. I think his takedowns are okay. You know, they're decently explosive. Maybe he shoots from very far out, but he's pretty quick when it comes to his takedown entries. He's got very high-level jiu-jitsu. That's where it's kind of interesting. Does he find the takedowns against Jeong Lee, who's been taken down multiple times before? I don't think so. I think Jeong Lee showed some solid takedown defense against Yijia. Although he got taken down 5 times, he stuffed, I think, 15 or 16 takedowns as well. And he's very good at scrambling back up to the feet. Like I said, he's got the power in his hands. I think he's got the much quicker hands. He should be the better striker here. But Blake Bilder's style on the feet is really annoying. He goes out there, circles the octagon nonstop, laterally moving, lands a couple of low kicks, barely entertains, the hands a little bit, and when he gets a little bit too confident, and then he gets tagged. Against Kyle Nelson, a guy that was a bigger opponent than him. And Jeong Lee, I think, is a pretty similar frame to Kyle Nelson, a little bit smaller, but he would throw the jab, and he would just miss on the jab. Kyle Nelson would be landing first, and that's how Kyle Nelson set up some of his bigger shots. That's when Kyle Nelson would have success. I think Jeong Lee's jab is going to be money, and I think he'll find a big shot, maybe with his right hand around rounds 1 or 2. But if he gets taken down, it is what it is. I can see it happening, and I can see him getting subbed, but he is a BJJ black belt. The reason why I found that out is because I was on his UFC.com and went through the Q&A, and he just said, hey, I'm a black belt. So that's something to like here as well, but ultimately I think this fight will be a striking matchup where he'll find the KO in the first couple of rounds. He could also win it by decision just based off of damage as well. Moving on to the next fight of the card. We got Themba Gorimbo versus Pete Rodriguez. I wanted to go with Pete. I really wanted to go with Pete so badly. Themba Gorimbo is not a good fighter. I genuinely think he's horrible. His striking is not good. he can get clipped with massive shots. His takedowns aren't even that good. His submission game isn't that good. On the regional scene, he's been taken down multiple times, dominated for 3 rounds on the regional scene. I'm rewatching fights of this guy, and I'm thinking, he sucks. And I think he's a really cool dude. And I think it's very nice that The Rock bought the house for him and all that. And, you know, he is just a solid dude you want as a friend. But respectfully, he's not a good fighter. Does he sort of have some power in his hands? Sure, he knocked down Takashi Sato. And Takashi Sato is not a very good fighter either. He's a guy that's been taken down and dominated by Gunnar Nelson. So when I look at this fight, I'm thinking, well, Pete Rodriguez, we don't know anything about his ground game. I mean, sure, he stuffed the takedown from Mike Jackson, but that was one of those where Mike Jackson is realizing he's probably going to get KO'd soon. He shoots in on a kind of a lame takedown, and Pete stuffs it pretty well, but it was like a half-assed takedown. And then I went back, watched every single fight of this guy on the regional scene, and the only thing I found was a guy shooting in on a takedown, and it looked like he was actually going to get it, but he just gave up and fell on his back, and Pete Rodriguez and ended up on top of him. I encourage you to go back and rewatch that fight. In my head, if Themba shoots that exact takedown and Pete Rodriguez has the reaction time that he had, Themba probably finds that takedown. And here's the thing about Themba Gorimbo, why I am ultimately very slightly leaning towards him. I think if you are betting Themba money line, you are not a smart person. You got a low IQ, you should get your IQ tested. And I think there's a lot of those fights on this card where there's inflated favorites and you should be betting the underdog even if you are not picking him here. And this is one of those matchups. I think betting Pete Rodriguez in the first or second round by KO is a pretty smart one to bet. And I'll say this much, he trains at a very good gym at MMA Lab. And then when you look at Themba Gorimbo, he trains at MMA Masters. I'm not very high on that camp. Another guy from that camp is fighting on this card, and Charles Radtke later in this card, which I will break down. MMA Masters is the same gym that hosts Colby Covington. And they have told him some bad advice. I mean, look at his game plan against Leon Edwards. He's going in there, you know, expecting him to just win on the feet for the first couple of rounds in a kickboxing match with Leon Edwards, not shooting a takedown in the first round. I mean, and when he did, it was kind of like a half-assed takedown. If Colby Covington was going to win that fight, he was going to have to do a Muradov type of approach where he's just going out there shooting takedown nonstop, nonstop, nonstop. But nope, he's slowly coasting his way. His corner's delusionally telling him that he's winning rounds, and then Colby thought he won the fight 4-1. These cornermen are kind of yes men, and the problem is Themba Gorimbo has this style where he's going to be shooting takedowns, not doing damage, and I don't trust these coaches to tell him how to score fights correctly. Now, this is one of those fights where if he's making it late, he's probably winning the fight. I think it's Pete Rodriguez, first round KO, maybe early second round KO or bust for him. We haven't seen him go late, so maybe he does have some good cardio. I really do like that gym. They got Sean O'Malley, Mario Batista coming up, Marcus McGee. There's a couple others that I could name as well. But that's a good gym that has some solid takedown defense and a solid ability to scramble back up to the feet. Jared Cannonier's there. Like, there's a lot of good fighters there, and it seems like some very competent coaching over there. So I do like that. MMA Masters, not the case. Another reason why I want to pick Pete Rodriguez, first round KO here, but ultimately, I don't even know if Themba Gorimbo needs to find the takedowns. Because here's what Themba Gorimbo does a lot. He's a very boring fighter most of the time, where if he fails the takedowns, cool, you're in the clinch for the next 3 if you can't separate. And it might be hard for a guy like Pete Rodriguez to do so. And what I will say about Themba, if I'm giving him a compliment, is when he shoots takedowns, although it might not be the most technically perfect, he shoots them very quick. He explodes to try and find the takedowns, and he puts his all into finding those takedowns. He fights with heart, and I got to give him credit. And he is really rangy, which could be a problem for Pete Rodriguez. But Pete Rodriguez just fought Mike Jackson, who is a similar build. I think a little bit smaller than Themba Gorimbo, but a similar build, and knocked him out. But Mike Jackson is worse than Themba Gorimbo. Mike Jackson should have never been in the UFC in the first place. Anyways, Themba Gorimbo is going to be the pick. I'm going to say 29-28. He probably loses the first round, could get clipped with a big shot. I am not the biggest believer in his chin, and when he got knocked out on the regional scene, it was from a striking style that I view as partially similar to Pete Rodriguez. Maybe not the guy is even close to the level of striker as Pete Rodriguez, but the shot that he caught Themba Gorimbo with is a similar type of shot that we have seen Pete Rodriguez throw time and time again. So if you're betting Pete Rodriguez, I'm with you, but Themba Gorimbo is going to be the slight pick. With the gun in my head, I would be picking Themba Gorimbo because he has tools to just interrupt the power and just stay away from the power of Pete Rodriguez. So Themba Gorimbo, 29-28 decision. Moving on to the next fight of the card, we're going Azat Maksum over Charles Johnson here. Not very confident. I just can't trust Charles Johnson. If you follow the career of Charles Johnson, you know he is a guy that leaves the fight on the feet close every single time. And Azat Maksum will be a guy that's shooting takedowns. He might not have the cleanest takedown entries, but he will work to get those takedowns, and he is not a bad striker. Against Tyson Nam, he displayed some pretty solid striking. Maybe not the greatest to me. He looks a little bit jittery, a little bit autistic out there, like he's going to get caught with the big shot at some point in his career. But Charles Johnson doesn't really have fantastic power to really interrupt as at Maksum, and I do think that Charles Johnson's takedown defense is not very good. Now, he has a good ability to scramble back up to the feet, but I'm not going to be relying on that. When it's a guy like Charles Johnson who just leaves it close on the feet, it could be one of those scenarios like DDP versus Sean Strickland, or I guess Movsar Evloev versus Arnold Allen, where it's close on the feet and then they land the takedown and the judges lean that way based off of seeing the takedowns later in the round. As that Maksum shot like 10 or 11 takedowns on Tyson Nam, I think if he shoots on Charles Johnson, he'll probably get about half of the takedowns. Charles Johnson is not that bad of a fighter. He just doesn't have the greatest style for scoring fights. And I really want to see some volume out of Charles Johnson if I'm confident of him here. But going into it in foresight, I'm not expecting him, and I'm not going to rely on Charles Johnson to really be putting up a lot of striking numbers here. So as that Maksum is the pick, I'll say like a 29-28, maybe a split decision, because that's what Charles Johnson loves to do. And if he loses, he's probably out of the UFC, so that's interesting. But as that Maksum didn't look that bad in his last performance. Won by split decision, I think, over Tyson Nam. Don't know how high I am on him yet. I don't think I'm very high on him, but I think he's probably better than Charles Johnson and has the tools to win it in a close fight. Takedowns will be the decider. Moving on to the next fight of the card, we got Molly McCann versus Diana Belbita. I'm going with Molly McCann, another one of those favorites that you should not be touching. You should be looking the other way. If you're betting on Molly McCann, get your IQ tested. Diana Belbita may be the more technical striker here. But she did lose the first fight, and I'm aware of that. And there was, a 10-8 round. I think there was a 10-7 round with the point deduction from the cage grab. Anyways, I think Molly McCann can probably find the takedowns here. There is a world where she gets all her takedowns stuffed, and not only that, Diana Belbita may be able to scramble back up to the feet. The reason why I'm going with Molly McCann with a slight lean here is because Diana Belbita, if I'm going to be confident about her beating Molly McCann, I want to see her going out there and beating Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She didn't look horrible in that fight, but the thing is she is getting hit, and I do like the finishing potential on the side of Molly McCann. Molly McCann hits hard, has good takedowns, has pretty decent cardio. Although she gets submitted a lot, Diana Belbita, from what I know, doesn't have a submission win. Maybe she got one, actually. I'll have to fact check that. Anyways, but Diana Belbita doesn't have great power. Doesn't have the X factors that I want to pick in a matchup like this, because although she might be the slightly more technical fighter, Molly McCann is a big bastard. The fact that she's cutting down to flyweight, is something that does concern me, because that does say that, hey, maybe her cardio is going to be affected by a bad weight cut, but that also does indicate to me that she's taking her career pretty seriously. If you check her Instagram, she's looking pretty shredded. I do think she could potentially land the bigger shots here. I like the finishing potential. I like the potential to take this fight down to the ground. I like that she's won before, but Diana has a very good chance, especially if this is on the feet. I could see her just winning at range. Molly McCann is not that good. I don't think she's that bad, though. I think she's going to push a pace and just make it a brawling fight with Diana Belbita, which is a fight that I think she should win. But Diana Belbita is not the worst striker in the world. She really is not. Moving on to Gilbert Urbina versus Charles Radtke. I'm going to be going with Gilbert Urbina here. I think he's got the massive frame advantage here, and that's why I'm going to be picking him ultimately. Charles Radtke may be the more skilled fighter. I don't think either one is that great. I think Gilbert Urbina didn't look good against Orion Cosce in his last performance. He looks slow and hittable on the feet. And if Charles Radtke goes out there and blitzes him, he probably finds the knockout in round one. Maybe he finds the takedowns, finds a submission in round one. Charles Radtke has 3-round cardio, so that's something to note. But Gilbert Urbina, ultimately, as a 6'3" dude, middleweight frame versus a lightweight frame, I'm going to be picking the middleweight frame here. And what Gilbert Urbina is good at doing is he rips nice teeps to the body and keeps his opponent at range for the most part. My issue is sometimes his range management is horrible. I could really see Charles Radtke finding a big shot here. But ultimately, I do think Gilbert Urbina is going to shoot some takedowns, probably lay in some. We have seen Charles Radtke on the regional scene get taken down and put in some vulnerable positions. Not that he's a poor grappler, but we just have seen that he's probably not the top of the crop when it comes to the grapplers. I do think Gilbert Urbina will find some takedowns, some success on the feet, probably have a kind of a mixed approach here. Maybe he finds a KO, but I do think Charles Radtke is pretty decently durable from what I understand. I'm going to be going with Gilbert Urbina. I'm going to say this probably makes it to decision if Gilbert Urbina wins, but if Charles Radtke wins, I do think he probably finds a finish. I could see a finish on the Urbina side as well. But, I mean, it just depends. I don't trust this camp that Charles Radtke is in. I mentioned this with Gorimbo. These MMA Masters guys don't really develop the greatest game plans. And like I said, against Blood Diamond, they were so adamant that he won round 1, I think, and it was a pretty close round. But like, these are the guys that when it comes to a guy like Charles Radtke, if Charles Radtke lands a takedown around, he was down on strikes by like 10, they're going to think that Charles Radtke won the fight. They're not high IQ coaches. And maybe I'm hating a little bit. I don't know them personally. They probably have some good jiu-jitsu experience. Probably, train their fighters pretty well. But when it comes down to it, they don't give good corner advice. There's been multiple occasions where, in my opinion, they are being yes men to Colby Covington, and they are not telling him what he is doing wrong. I can't trust Charles Radtke to make adjustments because of these coaches, but I can also trust Charles Radtke to go out there and bring the fight. And if he's not clinching up like he did to Blood Diamond, if he does the same thing that he did to Blood Diamond, I don't think it'll have as much success. I think Urbina will be better at breaking the clinch, potentially looking for takedowns of his own upon the break. Yeah, I think Urbina will have a takedown threat here as well. And just ultimately, Charles Radtke should, in my opinion, look to cut down to the lightweight division if he can make it possible. Maybe he is just one of those sturdy guys that carries a lot of weight for no reason. So maybe welterweight is his division, but ultimately I'm trusting the frame of Gilbert Urbina, and I'm not going to be trusting the camp of MMA Masters. Until they prove me wrong, I'm going to be fading them, and this is one of those matchups where I'm going to be factoring it in, and Gilbert Urbina will be the pick towards decision. I'll say 29-28, close decision. Moving on to the next fight of the card, we got Aliaskhab Khizriev versus Makhmud Muradov. I'm going to be going with Aliaskhab Khizriev. I wanted to go with Makhmud Muradov, and I was going to go because I'm like, hey, this guy survived Cal Bahayo on the ground. Cal Bahayo is a good guy when it comes to his submission game. He's a BJJ black belt, trained with Damian Maia, trains at a very good camp with a lot of great submission artists coming out of that camp. Cal Bahayo took him down and got reversed multiple times, and Makhmud Muradov found himself controlling Cal Bahayo at times. But then you start rewatching film, and I'm thinking, dude, look, he's got taken down by Cal Bahayo. He got taken down by Gerald Meerschaert a couple of times, and obviously submitted by Gerald Meerschaert, which is never a good look. But when I see him on the feet, it seems like he's having the most trouble when someone is pressuring him on the feet. A great example was against Gerald Meerschaert, where Meerschaert's taking it to him, landing some big shots. He's trading with him, and that's what Khizriev did a little bit against Dennis T. I would say Tulian, but I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, and that's just a really annoying one to pronounce. So against Dennis T, he would go in there and he'd trade a little bit. And then with the takedown threat against a guy like Makhmud Muradov, he's probably going to be able to pressure him. And I think he finds the takedowns. I think he's got some very slick takedown entries. He's got some nice single legs. DC was raving about one of his takedowns against Dennis T in the first round. In round 2, there was a very good moment where he manipulated the weight of Dennis Tulian and then grabbed the back, which eventually led to the submission. I think he's got some good work on the ground. Maybe not the greatest submission game. Maybe not as good as Cal Bahayo. But even then, Cal Bahayo has never been out there submitting a lot of people. I do think he's probably got better submissions than a guy like Aliaskhab Khizriev. And Aliaskhab Khizriev is a fat guy. He hasn't fought in like 2 years, which is never a good sign. He had a fight canceled against Jacob Malkoun, so who knows what that could be. Maybe he's injured. Maybe he couldn't make weight. He's withdrawn from a lot of fights throughout his career. I think there's like 4 or 5 in a row that he withdrew from, or maybe not him, but his opponent combined with. He's never been the most active guy. I don't like to see that, but I do think he's got some solid wrestling. He's definitely got some solid power, I'll tell you that much. He probably should be fighting at the welterweight division, and he definitely is a little bit too flabby for my liking if I'm going to be confidently picking him here. But I have seen the guy go 3 rounds in the regional scene. And in the 3rd round, was he looking like Muradov, super fresh? No. But he was landing takedowns. He was able to, although looking tired, sort of like the Dricus du Plessis, Alejandro Pantoja guys, dog through when he was tired and landed the shots. Now the question is, what happens if Makhmud Muradov is constantly stuffing these takedowns, and there's going to be a lot of striking? What happens in 3rd round when Makhmud Muradov stuffs these takedowns or scrambles back up to the feet? Then is he going to be gassed? If that's a scenario, I do think that would be the case, but ultimately, I'm not sure Makhmud Muradov has such a massive gap when it comes to the cardio advantage here. Because Makhmud Muradov, in round 3 against Bryan Barberena, say what you want, say he was being a little bit cautious and trying to control his cardio and secure the win, I do think he definitely was a little bit gassed there. Against Gerald Meerschaert, he gassed out in round 2, and in round 3 against Cal Bahayo, it was clear to me that he was getting gassed. And when he's gotten the most gas throughout his career outside of the Bryan Barberena fight, actually including the Bryan Barberena fight because he shot 13 takedowns, or landed 13 takedowns. When there's grappling within the fight, this is when Makhmud Muradov gets the most gas, and there will be grappling within this fight. I'm excited for this fight. I don't think Aliaskhab Khizriev is great at holding opponents down, so Makhmud can probably scramble back up to the feet, but I do think Aliaskhab Khizriev on the feet will present problems for Makhmud Muradov. I don't think he's that beautiful of a striker. I think he's definitely got power in the hands, but he does look a little bit not super clean to me. Now, with that being said, he's got a great straight right, and that's the shot that Dennis T landed multiple times in Aliaskhab, Khizriev, right? But ultimately, Khizriev to me looks like a guy that has a great chin. He took some good shots from Dennis T without even blinking, bro. I think this guy, his fat might work in his favor when it comes to his ability to take a shot on the feet, and then he's got good takedown entries. I think he finds the takedowns. When he's on top, he's not going to be going for the submissions, for all these different controls where he could potentially get reversed like a Calbahayo did. And even if he did, he's going to be playing it very safe. I mean, on the feet, Makhmud is probably the better striker, but I do think he'll work in the takedowns, land some big shots. I don't know how I feel about a TKO. I do think Makhmud has enough experience to survive Aliaskhab Khizriev. I think he's got some decent submission defense. The Jared Mearshart fight probably won't point that out, but against Calbahayo, I mean, he knew what he was doing for sure. He's not a bad grappler. I just do think Aliaskhab Khizriev wrestling and his top control. He's from Makachala, wherever the fuck that is. Well, you know what I mean. That's where Islam's from, Khabib's, for all those guys. I think he trains with them. Might not. I might be completely capping right now. But ultimately, I love his wrestling. He's got good power. He's got good physical traits. The question is, how good is his cardio? And I'm saying it can't be that much worse than Makhmud Muradov unless he's failing every single takedown, which I don't see happening when Makhmud Muradov's getting taken down by Jared Mearshart, got taken down by Calbahayo, and just doesn't have the greatest takedown defense I've ever seen. And Aliaskhab does have a very good wrestling base when it comes to his frame. Although he's fat, he's strong. I think he gets it done. I'm going to say a 29-28 decision with a strong round 3 from Makhmud Muradov. And he could find a KO late, but ultimately I'm going to be trusting Aliaskhab Khizriev here. Moving on to the next fight of the card, we got Natalia Silva versus Viviane Araujo. In this matchup, I will be going with Natalia Silva. I think she is the better striker. Should be able to keep this fight on the feet, if not scramble back up to the feet. I do expect the majority of this fight to be on the feet, and she is the better striker. She maintains range pretty well, has some very nice kicks, and if anyone finishes this fight, in my head, it should be Natalia Silva finding a KO on the feet. But Viviane Araujo has more experience, is more of a vet in this game. Pretty well-rounded, but I do think she'll have to work in some takedowns to win this fight. However, I've been wrong before, and Natalia Silva didn't look perfect in her most recent performance against Andrea Lee. And Jennifer Maia is a good win to have recently because Jennifer Maia went out there and beat Casey O'Neill, but Casey O'Neill just got submitted or finished in the second round by Ariana Lipski. So maybe that wasn't as good of a win in hindsight from Jennifer Maia. And when I'm mentioning Jennifer Maia, that's because Viviane Araujo beat her by decision. Anyways, I do think Natalia Silva wins this. It will be a striking fight for most of the match. I'll say a 30-27 Natalia Silva by decision. But if she loses, I've seen more crazy things to happen in this sport. And there is some unknowns to her. She's a little bit less experienced. I'm interested to see how this one plays out. I think Natalia Silva is one of the better women's prospects on the come-up right now. Moving on to the next fight of the card, we have Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikhov. I'm going to go with Randy Brown. I wanted to go with Muslim Salikhov, but ultimately, I'm going to have to go with Randy Brown because Muslim Salikhov is now almost 40 years old. He is coming off a loss, and I do think that he is potentially the more skilled and the better striker here. The issue is you got to deal with the massive reach from Randy Brown. And Randy Brown has much better cardio than you. Muslim Salikhov is a guy that I think is a lot of fun. A slick striker. He's got good combinations, good counters. Very fun kicks to the body. Very fun spinning back kicks to the body, to the head. Fun guy to watch. I think he's a kung fu, karate, or taekwondo. One of those things. He's like a medalist in the Olympics. This guy's a solid striker. A lot of fun to watch. I mean, he's got some decent takedown defense as well. I could even see him working in takedowns against Randy Brown. And this is at the UFC Apex, so I like this in favor of Muslim Salikhov because Randy Brown is a rangy guy that will really take advantage of a bigger octagon. Now we're in the Apex, the smaller octagon. Muslim Salikhov has knockout power. The issue is he's 39 years old, coming off a loss, and I'm not sure he hits the same. Andre Fialho is a guy who has been knocked out multiple times throughout his career, isn't known as a guy with the greatest chin, and Muslim Salikhov was landing clean shots on him, and while Andre was rocked at times, there were certain moments where you want him to be flat out, or you want him to be rocked, especially in the first round. I don't think he really rocked him at any point. Maybe stunned him for a little bit, but I'm not sure that he hits as hard as he used to, and if I'm going to bet on anyone to have a massive decline, I'm going to be betting on the 39-year-old. If this is Muslim Salikhov prior to the Li Jingliang fight, I'm probably picking Muslim Salikhov here, decently confident. But if there's anyone that has lost a step, it's probably Muslim Salikhov. And I'll say this much, Randy Brown will lose this fight if Muslim Salikhov has the right game plan. My issue is I don't think he'll have the right game plan, and here's the reasoning behind it. Randy Brown is so open to getting leg kicked. If Muslim Salikhov would chop the legs of Randy Brown from the start, he is my pick. And that's why I was on the Muslim Salikhov side for a long time. Like, oh, he's going to win this. He's got good leg kicks. I have seen him land great leg kicks against Francisco Trinaldo. Other performances as well. He's got great body kicks, and I think the leg kicks would set up the body kicks against Randy Brown, who has been body kicked pretty cleanly against Chaos Williams. Wellington Turman landing a nice spinning back kick in round 3. There's a couple other examples. I went down and I dissected the tape because I didn't know how it was going to end up. Ultimately, I have to go with the Randy Brown side because when I rewatch Muslim Salikhov, the dude rarely rips to the legs. Even though he has a great calf kick, he rarely does it. Against Nicholas Dalby, a guy with a super long stance similar to Randy Brown. He ripped the calf 3 times, I think the whole fight. Maybe more, maybe a little bit more. It was in the first round. I know he ripped it 3 times, so probably a little bit more than that. But he didn't go back to it, and that is a key strike that's going to work against such a long stance like a Randy Brown. And before watching that Nicholas Dalby fight, I would have been like, all right, cool. Muslim Salikhov, the striker of karate, fucking taekwondo, or kung fu, whatever the fuck it is. He's the king of kung fu, so maybe it's kung fu, but I don't know. Someone let me know in the comments below. But a striking medalist, you would expect him to pick up on a wide stance and the ability to chop that leg, but no, he does not. And I don't understand why. If he told me in the interviews the calf kick will be there and I'm targeting the calf kick, he is the pick. My issue is, I can't trust him to do that. If you can't register that against Nicholas Dalby, a guy, when you kicked his leg, he was getting touched. I mean, he was getting put off balance to some degree. He did check one of them, but after he checked that, Muslim didn't throw any kicks back his way. He was just kind of shied away from it, went back to his body kicks, which are good, and I think will have success, and that spinning back kick to the body will be money. And the fact that this is in a smaller octagon increases his chances of finishing this fight, and Randy Brown doesn't have the greatest chin. But Randy Brown is only getting knocked out by guys with pretty solid power. I mean, against Chaos Williams, he got clipped a couple of times, but still made it to a decision, right? He got knocked out by Luke. He got knocked out by Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, there's probably some other fights that I'm forgetting and maybe not the most powerful guys, but for the most part, it takes a clean shot to put Randy Brown down, and when he does get hurt, he recovers pretty well. I mean, although Vicente Luque did knock him out, he was dropped 2 more times and was able to recover during those times, didn't get submitted. I do think that in the Apex, this massively favors his style, and I really, really do want to pick him. But coming off a loss where he did take a lot of damage, and he was beating Dalby in the first round, the guy was such a wide stance, he was doing pretty well against him in the first round up until that head kick landed. And then he got hurt, and then he's getting rocked all over the place. And then round 2, he's getting rocked. Round 3, he's getting hit with big shots. Like, he took a fair bit of damage in that performance at 39 years old. And even though Randy Brown was the guy to withdraw from their fight at UFC 296 because he had the flu or something like that, so he's probably, I mean, ultimately, it's been like a month or so since then, so I do think he's fully recovered. But ultimately, like, I have to go with the guy that I know is going to show up with good cardio and is going to have a solid reach advantage and maybe can take this fight down to the ground versus the decaying Muslim Salikhov, who I will be cheering for. I think he's a fun guy to watch, and although he's old, I don't see him retiring that soon. I think he needs some damn money, so he's a fun guy to watch. I'll be cheering for him. His spinning back kicks to the body will be money. I think his body kicks should be money. They're there against Randy Brown, but the low kicks would be great for setting it all up, will be great for hindering the movement of Randy Brown, which will be detrimental to his success in the UFC Apex in a smaller octagon. I'm going to have to trust the Randy Brown side here. I'm going to say 29-28, maybe a split decision. I think Muslim Salikhov will have the most success in the early rounds, but Randy Brown will get it popping off late, maybe find a late KO if Muslim Salikhov is really starting to slow down. I don't think that will be the case, though, and I think he does survive for 3. So 29-28, split decision or very close competitive decision in favor of Randy Brown, but he is not a confident pick here. Moving on to the next fight of the card, the co-main event, we got Renato Moicano versus Drew Dober. I'm going with Renato Moicano. I can understand the Drew Dober side. Renato Moicano doesn't have the greatest chin. He's been knocked out by Khizriev, Aldo, TKZ, and he's been knocked down a couple of times as well. I still think that he may even be the more technical striker. I do believe he's the more technical striker. He's probably got the quicker hands, but he's not as powerful. And if he gets clipped, he will lose this fight. This happened when Drew Dober fought Bobby Green. Drew Dober went out there, was getting pieced up. Bobby Green was a massive favorite in the live betting, and then Drew Dober walks forward, takes a big shot, and then boom, Bobby Green's out. He lands a bigger shot. Took one to give one, and that could be the case here. Renato Moicano doesn't have that type of power that Drew Dober needs to worry about too much. Does he have some power? Yes. Does he have a very nice jab? I think he's got a pretty solid jab that will work pretty well here. But ultimately, the reason why I'm picking Renato Moicano is because he can take down Drew Dober. I know Drew Dober is short, he's stocky, so you would expect him to have pretty solid takedown defense, but it's not that great. He's been taken down multiple times by Brad Riddell, other fighters as well. He's been submitted multiple times throughout his career. Islam Makhachev, not Brad Riddell, but there's been other fighters as well that have submitted this guy. I'm not too high on this guy's submission defense, and recently he's fought a lot of strikers. Matt Frivola, who did he fight last? Oh my gosh. I watched this damn fight like yesterday. Anyways, he hasn't been fighting many grapplers. I don't think that's very good for him. Rafael Alves, that wasn't a guy that was really shooting in on many takedowns. His takedown defense isn't horrible. My thing about Renato Moicano is he can miss the takedown and then scramble around to your back and find a rear naked choke, lock in a body triangle. That's how that fight can play out. And I ultimately do think Renato Moicano will shoot on a takedown, potentially miss the takedown, and scramble over to the back of Drew Dober, grab it and find a rear naked choke in 1 point during the first couple of rounds. I think on the feet, he's a bigger threat than some of the people picking Drew Dober think. Although Drew Dober is fun, he is exciting, he's powerful, I do think Renato is the better overall mixed martial artist and has the range advantage too. I think that's a big thing. But Renato Moicano is 2 or 3 inches taller than Drew Dober. He has the reach advantage. I think he's quicker, a little bit more technical, and he can potentially find the takedowns. If he finds the takedowns, I think he finds a submission. If he misses the takedowns, he can work and scramble over to the back, threaten submissions from there. And if it's on the feet and it's just a clear striking fight, I do favor Dober. But just know there is going to be a takedown threat from Renato Moicano, which we normally don't see Drew Dober fighting with a takedown threat on the feet. So that could be a very interesting part to it. Renato Moicano runs his own YouTube channel. He does his own predictions. So he probably watches a lot of film, which probably means he's picking up a lot of things. Now, I don't really follow his YouTube channel. I don't think I've ever watched a video of it. I've seen a couple of clips. He seems like a funny guy, but he trains at American top team. I know he trains with Movsar Evloev. He's probably got some other great training partners over there with him. There's some good wrestling coaches over there. I mean, that's a good gym. We're going to get some nice sparring partners, so I'm going to bet on Renato Moicano, but I am not ruling out a Drew Dober KO because he's got nukes in his hands. Not horrible cardio either, so he's live in any of the rounds. And at any point, even if Renato Moicano is just dogging him for the first couple of rounds, Drew Dober might be a very, very solid live bet. But ultimately, I'm going to have to go with Renato Moicano, who I think is the better overall mixed martial artist, should be able to maintain range, and has a massive takedown threat and submission threat if it reaches the ground or if he's able to scramble around to the back of Drew Dober. So round 1 or 2 submission, Renato Moicano. Let's move on to the next fight of the card. This is going to be Nassourdine Imavov. This is actually probably my most confident pick on the card. And when I say that, maybe not the most confident, but prior to doing research, this is the one fight where I've just been so confident I'm going to end up picking this guy, and it's Nassourdine Imavov. And it's because he's so much of a better striker than Roman Dolidze. In my opinion, Roman Dolidze looked like absolute dog shit. Absolute dog shit on the feet against Jack Hermansson and Marvin Vettori. I think he is a horrible striker. It is going to look insane when we're watching Nassourdine Imavov in the same cage with Roman Dolidze. You're going to say, how are these guys the same weight class? Because Nassourdine Imavov is going to be so much quicker on his feet, much better footwork. Roman Dolidze is going to slowly creep forward, throw a couple of overhand rights, miss against Nassourdine Imavov, who has proven 5-round cardio and has actually taken a round off of Sean Strickland in round 5. I know that was Sean Strickland on short notice, but he's got solid cardio. It really is solid cardio. In a 5-round fight, this massively benefits him. Maybe he finds a late KO. I'm picking him by decision. And when it comes to his grappling, sure, I know his defensive grappling hasn't been that tested, but Roman Dolidze's offensive wrestling really is not that good. And Nassourdine Imavov has had some solid offensive wrestling shown throughout his career. Just offensive grappling, I want to say. Against Edmund Shabazian, took him down, found a crucifix. I think that was round 2. And then Chris Curtis was a guy that a lot of people were saying, well, hey, he has great takedown defense. Nassourdine Imavov is not going to get this fight down to the ground, and he did twice. I think maybe even more than that, but he got him down easy, made it look easy, made Chris Curtis's takedown defense look like a joke. And Chris Curtis stuffed all the takedowns from Rodolfo Vieira. Rips to the body very well. He has like very good natural underhooks because of how often he rips to the body. And Imavov just took him down. Made it look very, very easy. Was dominating Chris Curtis up until that weird head clash scenario where Imavov was winning the first. He won the first. And he was winning the second. And then the fight came to an end. I think it resulted in a draw or a no contest, something like that. I can't honestly tell you. I remember what it is. But I think Imavov is the much better striker. Has shown a part to his grappling that is better than, in my opinion, Sirogan, who's also in his camp. I do think he'll be able to stuff the takedowns from Roman Dolidze. I don't think that's that hard of a challenge. If he shoots takedowns on Roman Dolidze, though, like Jack Hermansson did, I think Jack Hermansson did, and that's why he lost that fight. He will lose this fight as well. I think Roman Dolidze has very solid jiu-jitsu, but everywhere else, Nassourdine Imavov should be the better fighter. I don't think he's getting knocked out. I think, honestly, on the feet, it's going to look like a night and day difference. He's quick, he's landing his feet, and losing to Sean Strickland really isn't that bad. It really isn't. And he's got a good jab. Like, he's got good footwork. He's young. He's improving. Roman Dolidze is like 35. He's an old, decaying man. I think when I'm looking at someone that I'm going to throw my money on, it's going to be Nassourdine Imavov. But ultimately, how good is the grappling in that camp? If Roman Dolidze finds a takedown and submits him, that would be kind of hilarious. And I think Roman Dolidze is a pretty fun guy. Like, he's got power, he's got a good submission game, but he's really not a very solid fighter. And his win streak isn't that good to me. You know, Kyle Dawkins, not a very good fight. He lost to Trevin Giles, a guy with a good jab, right? Nassourdine Imavov, good jab, good straight punches, quicker, better footwork. Yeah, I don't know. And Trevin Giles is a welterweight. Anyways, moving back to Roman Dolidze's win streak, it's been Kyle Dawkins, a guy who's out of the UFC now. Phil Hawes, a guy that's gotten knocked out a million times. Granted, Phil Hawes is a good fighter, and the way that Roman Dolidze beat him was pretty impressive. But Jack Hermansson's beating him on the feet. You know, holy shit, dude, he looked like shit on the feet in that fight. But then he shoots the takedown and gets submitted. Keep this fight on the feet, Nassourdine, and you win this fight. Don't be dumb. Don't shoot a takedown. And this will be one of the easier fights in your career. I do believe so. Just stay away from that right hand. Use your speed to circle. You got 5 rounds to beat this guy. You can find a KO later, maybe a decision. I think he could 50-45 him here. I honestly do think that. But I could also see Roman Dolidze going out there and finding an early finish. I would pick Nassourdine Imavov by KO, but Roman Dolidze seems like a guy that has a brick head and can take any shot. He's never been KO'd in his career either. I think he's got a very, very solid chin. So Nassourdine Imavov is the pick. I'm pretty confident in him. I honestly give him like a 65-70% chance to win this fight. I think that at minus 166, that's a pretty good value. But if he loses, he'll make me look dumb, and he's going to get annihilated, probably by shooting his own takedown, getting submitted, or even getting taken down by a guy like Roman Dolidze, which I don't think it should be that tough of a test to stuff the takedowns from a Roman Dolidze. But I'll say this much, Nassourdine Imavov, I think he's trained in Dagestan, or from Russia. He's got Dagestan roots. I know he's trained in the grappling more than Ciryl Gane has. He should be a much, much more profound grappler than Ciryl Gane. And even if it hits the ground, that doesn't mean necessarily that it's wraps. There's so much unknown about his grappling game that we don't even know how submission defense is. And maybe Jack Hermansson just made a massive mistake, but I do think that Roman Dolidze has a massive advantage down on that ground. So I'll give him like a 65-70% chance to win this fight. And that's going to conclude this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.